Well, let me start with what I would like to talk about for today. And one of the things that I find that happens to a lot of us, not only in my practice, but in my own friends, and even in my own life. But we like to go to certain things to just medicate ourselves, right? We like to resort to different things that can just ease the tension, ease the pain, without really addressing the main issue. So we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about how we do that with God, how we go to God and we look for Him to just, instead of really addressing some major heart issues, some major sin issues, we go to Him just to medicate ourselves. Now, before we do that, it would be great if you could take a moment. I'll give you a prompt, and you could share with the other person basically what your answer to this prompt is, just to help me get ready, but also just to connect with each other just for a moment. But what are things that you go to medicate yourself, right? What are your self-medications that you run to, right? Now, you could go as light as you like boba runs, or if you want to go as deep as you want to, right? Then that's okay. So it's confession time, right? And so as you think about it, let me go down a list of maybe certain things that can conjure up like, oh yeah, I do that, right? So maybe for you, it is boba runs, right? And maybe when you're kind of having one of those stressful days or stressful weeks, you don't know which one to get, should you get the Thai tea or the brown sugar with 100% sugar boba, and to kind of medicate yourselves, you just buy both, right, and drink it all, right, all at the same time, right? Maybe you like to do some online shopping on Temu, right, and then you start with one item, but then because you want that free shipping and that extra discount, just to get the minimum, you keep adding more and more to your cart, right? My wife, what she likes to do, I don't know if any of you are like this, but she likes watching TikTok videos because she's on this like amazing, crazy homeopathic solutions, right? So she even grew and even brewed her own echinacea. Anyone know what that is, right? Elderberry, anyone? And so she's on to this mission. So sometimes our kitchen looks like a science laboratory, right? And I don't know what I can drink or not drink, and so because I don't know what she's doing. And sometimes I think in some jars I see her brewing something. I think one time I saw a pair of eyeballs blinking at me, And I think I heard a whisper saying, "Help me," So I don't know if that was my wife's doing or just something that she created a new creature. For me, I'm the Facebook Marketplace guy. That's like when I have a stressful day, like oh yeah, let's see what kind of unnecessary ginormous rims I can find for my car, or what are some exhaust sounding bombastic things that I can add to my car that's really, really unnecessary. But in the moment, it is everything, right? You know what I mean? All right, so turn to the person next to you and share with them what do you go to medicate yourself, right? What is your self-medication? Go. All right, let's come back. Thank you for obliging me and actually doing the prompt, and it's great to hear the energy and the interaction. So thank you for taking the time to share with each other. Well, I bring this up in the issue of different ways that we medicate ourselves because there are consequences, right? And there are let's say there's even major physical consequences. Sometimes I know there are a lot of people in the financial and even in the tech industry that medicate themselves with Adderall, modern day speed, right? Because they think if I could just plow through, if I could just get this thing to help me plow through, and some of you probably know other students that do it just so that they can maintain their GPA, right? And can you imagine the severe consequences of that, right? Others, sometimes we medicate ourselves with certain online activities that, at first it's fun, but after a while it takes kind of a dark turn where we find ourselves in a very dark place. And not only do we find ourselves in a dark place, but we find ourselves isolated and even just in worse shape, right? And so the issue, I think, with kind of finding different things and finding different ways to medicate ourselves, it creates this false illusion that whatever issues we have, we could keep it at a low grade level, right? And so, and that's what we do, right? I mean, like Advil is helpful, right? Or Tylenol is helpful, but does it address the major heart issues or blood pressure issues or lifestyle issues that you may have? And so I find that one of the issues that happens, and it starts with, we just go to this thing, and whatever that thing is, and it's not just always like a drug-dependent thing, an online activity thing, but it could also be things that are less obvious on how we medicate ourselves, but it could be our jobs, right? It could be our looks. It could be our grades, right? We go to these things hoping it will just push down some of those insecurities that we have, but whatever job that you have, that insecurity is still there. Whatever career growth that you're experiencing, that fear of inadequacy is still there. That sense of lostness is still there. The fears of not ever being good enough or having enough is still there, right? And so that's what happens when we medicate ourselves. We find these things to kind of help us cope. And the problem is, the big question is, would you rather have like a acute major crisis come up, right? Or would you rather have years and years and years of this low-grade issue that stays with you? I think sometimes we'd rather just have the low-grade issue because it gives us that false illusion that we could just manage it and it won't really affect us. The problem is it does. It does. And it grows over time. It's like the worst fund with the worst high accelerating interest rates, right? The more we think, okay, this major issue I have, or this lack of security, this feeling of not being good enough, this sense of always feeling alone, this feeling that nobody cares, and so we just push it to the side, thinking, okay, I'll just build my career, or I'll do this, or I'll do that, right? And we keep it just follows us everywhere we go, and it rears its head in sometimes subtle ways or in major ways in our relationships. So as a result, then, we find ourselves more and more isolated, more and more frustrated, and more stuck. But here's the thing. We do this with God, right? We go to God, and we try to medicate ourselves with God. And sometimes we do that by over-spiritualizing things, right? Now, I don't mean we don't go to God, we don't go to pray. We should do all those things, for sure, right? But we do those things not wanting God to address the deep-rooted issues. So we get ourselves overly busy with church stuff. We get ourselves overly busy with learning the text. We get ourselves overly busy with just different activities, which are good things, don't get me wrong, are incredible things. But we don't let God address the deeper issue. Right now, like some of you, it's like you just feel like you're pulled in so many different directions, right? And for me, my situation is, I have a father that's 86. He has Alzheimer's. And so every day is a different adventure on what his needs are, right? And then my own family, there's been multiple health issues and health scares. And so it's like, can we just have 1 week where it's like normal? Anyone can relate to that, right? And on top of that, there's a church that I care deeply, right? And I feel so guilty when I don't feel like I have enough time. And so sometimes what I do is I have my daily reading, I read 2 chapters, and sometimes my attitude is I would just read it just to get through it, just so that I check off that list of, not being a bad pastor that doesn't read his Bible, right? But also, I do it in hopes that maybe it'll make me feel better. But I just read, nothing, and I just move on. Without really letting God address, without going to God with what's really going on inside. I'm scared. I feel vulnerable, and I'm standing on fragile ground. Now, everything is taken care of, and that's the hard part, right? That's the worst part. Everything is good. Everything is okay. But I'm not going to God with that. But you see how I medicate myself? By just reading the Bible in hopes that, okay, I'll feel better. And so what does it look like then to go to God and not use him as some medication, but experience what he truly offers? So if you have your Bibles, turn with me to Mark 5, and we'll look at verses 21 through 42. We're going to read through it, and then we'll highlight a few things that I think helps us to see how Jesus didn't let this woman settle for just some miracle, right? It's just kind of crazy to think about. He didn't just settle to give her a miracle, but he wanted to offer her so much more, not only to her, but to a father, to a daughter, all at the same time. All at the same time. Multiple plots thickening in this one passage, right? And this is what we see throughout Jesus' ministry. You always see him offer more than just a miracle, offer more than just the right answer. Why does he do that? Because he doesn't want us to settle for just a medicated answer, medicated miracle, but he also wants to offer so much more. All right, so let's turn to Mark 5, and we'll look at verse 21 through 43. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on me so that she may be well and live." So here's a dad who is desperate, right? He's desperate because his daughter is dying, right? And he's running to Jesus. He's pleading with Jesus. Because up until this point, he's probably heard everything about Jesus that everyone else has heard. The miracles, the small miracles, turning water into wine. For some people, that's a big miracle because they love wine, right? And then there's the healings, right? And so at this point, Jesus is very popular, right, for the things that he does for people. And so it's exciting. And so Jairus, who's a ruler of the synagogue, like he's one of the top leaders in the synagogue, the local temple, goes to Jesus. And what's interesting is he's also the group that starts talking behind Jesus' back, finding ways to get rid of him. So that's really interesting if you think about it. Now, here he is in his situation. He's got a daughter that's dying. So the one that they were trying to figure out on how to get rid of, he is now the one that he goes to find help, right? And so, and now catch what happens next, verse 24, and he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. So they're just like, it's just like, you know, like, I don't know, you ever go to Costco on a Saturday afternoon, like that kind of crowd, but maybe more, right? So it's really crowded, right? And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. Here's a woman that was bleeding for 12 years and who had suffered much under many physicians and had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. So here's a woman that's been bleeding. And it's interesting, the writer wants us to see that how she has suffered. So what he also leaves out is she has suffered socially and even religiously. Because of her condition, there was a sort of a social standard that she could not be around people, basically. She couldn't even be around a rabbi. So she wanted to go to get prayer or some kind of spiritual support. She couldn't even go to them. And not only that, she had lost all her money hoping these physicians could help her. And I hope that's something you've never had to face, but it's so painful because you get so tired of talking to this physician, and you just get so tired of having hope. And this is where she is. So verse 27, she had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him. Now, maybe she's thinking, if I go to Jesus, Jesus is going to say, I can't be near you. This is not socially correct. Religiously, I'm a religious figure. I cannot be near you. So maybe that's what just maybe, right? So why didn't she just go, hey, Jesus, can you help me, right? Maybe she's also tired of the way people have treated her. Instead of helping her, they push her away. So she just thought, I've heard all these crazy, amazing things. I heard that someone touched him and something happened. I heard this one guy had a big old pimple, and then he just walked by and his hair brushed him, and then all of a sudden the pimple was gone, right? Maybe, yeah, that would be great, huh? Yeah, especially all the pimples on my back, go away. Anyways. So I don't have that. I was just kidding, but I'm sorry if you do. Okay, anyways. And so she went up and touched him. And guess what happened? For she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. She's like, if I could just touch him, even just his cloth, even a speck of a dust that comes off of him, if I could just touch him, then everything would be better. Then I can have friends again. I can focus on my career again. I can be a normal person again. So you catch her thinking? You can catch why she wants to touch Jesus? She's hoping that she can just be healed. But not just be healed, but to be normal again. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Now, notice it doesn't end there, right? If I was a writer, I'm like, that's a great story, right? That's a good way to promote Jesus, right? Right? You would think that, the writer would want to end there. But the writer doesn't stop, and Jesus doesn't stop, right? Which is interesting. You would think for Jesus, like, this would be more efficient if he just did his miracles that way, right? Like, if I was Jesus, I would think, okay, I got to heal as many people as I can. I'll just run by people, right? Like, I'll just run by people, and then, woo, just run by, right? So if I see a crowd, I'm just going to be like, everyone stay still. I'm going to run to you, right? Or I'm going to throw my clothes all over, right, to everyone, right? Now, why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't he do that? So in verse 30, and Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, right? There's so much fun speculation. If you ever want to, you can read all the different meanings of that, what that means. But I think what it means is Jesus cares about our interactions. He's not a impersonal object, right? He's not just like, you go touch this thing and you're all better. He's a person that cares about our interactions, right? So then in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciple says, "Are you crazy? Everyone's touching you," right? You see the crowds pressing around you, and yet you say, "Who touched me? What is wrong with you? Aren't you all knowing?" You know, right? Now again, sometimes you have to remember when Jesus asks us a question, there's a purpose and strategy with his questions, right? Is to cause and to create some reflection, right? So it's not necessarily rhetorical, although it is rhetorical, but it's to cause a reflection, right? In verse 32, and he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This is what happened, and then that happened, and I went to that physician," and you know. So now, as she's telling Jesus this, okay, I want you to remember Jairus. Can you imagine poor Jairus is like, "Oh my gosh, my daughter's dying. You know, she's dying. If we don't get back in time, she's gonna die." Right? But what is Jesus doing here? He's like, "Oh, tell me more." "Oh, and then that guy said that. Oh, it's terrible," right? And then what happened? And then they told you to wear this, right? That's terrible, right? And then he said to her, "Daughter," right? "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease," right? Now, there's a lot to unpack there, right? But he's saying, daughter, right? Now, you might ask, healed of your disease, there's one layer of that disease. There's a physical disease. But the fact that he calls her daughter, because the disease that would separate her from Jesus would not allow her to be called daughter. The disease of sin, the disease of imperfection, the disease of not being good enough. But because of what Jesus does on the cross for each of us, he brings the ultimate healing to that disease, so that instead of calling us enemies, he can call us son, daughter. And there's a little play on that word daughter here, okay? Verse 35, while he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" Not the most helpful messenger there, okay? Not the most sensitive, right? But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, and brother James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, because the daughter is gone, and this is someone that they probably looked up to and admired and adored. So to see someone that you adore suffer, right? You would be wailing and crying too because of just how much you feel for them, right? And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping," right? But sleeping. And they laughed at him. Why are they laughing at him? Because they underestimate not only what Jesus can do, but they're underestimating who Jesus is. Like, what are you talking about? Stick to your water to wine miracles, okay? You have the fun, cool party miracles, you know? That's cute. You have cute miracles, Jesus, right? But they laugh at him because they're underestimating him. But he put them all aside. Now, if I was just like, get out of here, get out of here, right? Let me do my stuff, right? But I don't know if Jesus did or not. But he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said, "Talitha kumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years old. And they were immediately overcome with amazing. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. Right? So let's take a look at what's going on here. Let's start with this woman's situation. All right, let's start with this woman. She suffered. Now she's been physically suffering. She's been bleeding for 12 years, right? Her iron levels are drained, right? And whatever medical bodily stuff comes out with that, right? So she's suffering, right? So who knows just the condition of her body because of that. But also remember, her identity suffered, right? She was known as the bleeding woman, right? It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And in some ways, what that also means back then, and I think we do this today, when someone has a chronic issue, what do we do? What do we instinctively think? And some of us, we manage this, but what do we instinctively think? What did she do wrong? It's something she did, right? If she had a better attitude, she wouldn't. So can you imagine how her identity suffered? And if any of you have ever suffered any chronic things, you probably can relate to that. She also suffered relationally, where everyone kept a distance. You had to follow the rules. And then spiritually, you couldn't get close to a rabbi. Couldn't even go to the temple, right? And so what's interesting is she gets what she wants, right? She gets healed. She's like, all of a sudden, like her iron levels shoot up and whatever else, like all of her hormonal changes, all get stabilized, right? She's a new woman. So she got what she wanted, and she wanted to leave. And so what we see here is a lot of us are like this woman. Maybe a lot of us, we've been facing some kind of chronic pain, physical pain, or maybe some of us have been facing some kind of chronic emotional pain, right? Where you're just like, how much longer do I have to deal with this, right? And maybe you've been medicating yourselves with small things here and there or major things, but that pain is still there. And it's starting to hurt more and more. It's starting to impact you more and more. And so this is the woman's situation, and I wonder if some of us could relate to her. Now let's look at Jairus' situation. He was a respected figure in the Jewish community, responsible for overseeing operations of the synagogue, maintaining order, organizing, let's say, their worship services. He was a leader, and he was also well-versed in the Jewish laws and customs, and again, likely very influential in his community. But as prominent and as deserving, that he is of his position, his daughter is dying. So he's desperate. Now, I don't know about you, but I see this with, let's say, clients or even just people in general. Sometimes the ones that have the hardest time dealing with disappointments are the ones that have gotten very far in life, because it just doesn't make sense, right? You're just like, what did I do to deserve this? What happened? And I suspect a lot of us, I think what we realize is a lot of us, we have a hard time dealing with disappointments, or when things don't turn out the way they should, we have such a hard time because we're really, really, really stuck on this linear timeline of our lives. You do this, then that happens. And then after that happens, you do this, and then that happens. And then this, that, and then everything you do, right? And so no wonder then if for a lot of us up until you're 25, 35, 45, 55, even 75, things went smoothly, and all of a sudden it's like something cut off that linear timeline. And then as a result, is so discombobulating because you're just like, your rhythm is off. You're like, what happened? Right? I was on such a good streak, in a sense. And I think that's why for a lot of us, it's so devastating running into these disappointments, because the one thing that you have built your life on, the one thing that's giving you comfort and security has been that linear timeline. And now it's off. And now it's chaotic. Right? And so we see that he's desperate. Again, he's part of this group trying to get rid of Jesus, right? That's an interesting thing. But he's so desperate, he goes to Jesus. Now, don't you love how Jesus interacts with him? He doesn't go, weren't you talking behind my back? Right? Weren't you trying to figure out ways to get rid of me? Weren't you trying to sabotage my ministry? You're part of this group that's eventually going to talk about killing me, right? Or maybe you've already been talking about that. But Jesus doesn't do that, right? And so how does Jesus respond? The first part is, take a look at this, how he responds and what that says about him. The first thing is, he takes his time. Oh, isn't that the worst? Right? Oh, I don't know about you. When there's a crisis, that's like, the answers to the crisis should be the same pace as the crisis itself, explosive. But when you're finding you're about to fall apart, everything you built is about to fall apart, and Jesus is just like, doo-doo-doo. Oh, what happened? Tell me more, right? That is so, what is going on there, right? What is going on? He doesn't rush. You know, kind of comes off insensitive, right? Just to be fair, right? If I was Jairus, I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, come on, woman, right? Do you know who I am? Some of us might think that, right? So it doesn't make sense that Jesus is taking his time, and it's almost as if he doesn't care. What Jairus didn't know was that Jesus wasn't planning on curing the fever, right? Jesus was not, the plan wasn't just to, take care of the fever. Jesus was planning on a resurrection. Jesus was putting together a greater miracle, right? To show the child, show Jairus and everyone around why we can put our faith in him. Get it? It's like, do you want to know Jesus as the healer or Jesus the one that brings us back from the dead? Which Jesus do you prefer? Right? If it seems like God is taking his time, let's say you're not getting that job that you want. You're not finding a life partner. Or your life partner is not the life partner that they should be. Right? There's tension. Or the tension with kids. Right? Or tension with even others, just whoever it may be. Or even you may be finding issues with even your own health. If it seems like God is taking his time, it's because God wants to give you more than you can ever imagine in what would be helpful. Maybe you'll get a new job, but you get so much more than a new job. Right? You get a loving Father who loves you, that adores you, that will send his Son to die for you. You get something so much greater than the miracle that gives you a better job, better health, better relationship. You get the ultimate one that will never abandon you, that will never leave you, and that will always love you. The second thing is, he listens and responds. The bleeding woman approached Jesus in fear, but she walked away empowered, wouldn't you say? Fully restored. And not only fully restored, but she walked away being called what? Daughter. No longer defined by her condition, but now she's defined by what Jesus calls her, daughter. I can't remember if I ever mentioned this story, and I don't know if it's my dad's Alzheimer's or I'm all paranoid, like, oh no, am I? So if I've shared these stories before, I'm so sorry. But these videos I like watching from time to time, it is kind of corny, okay? Just to let you know, it is a little corny, all right? So I get in corny moods sometimes. But it's these videos of these kids who are adopted, and they bring their adopted parents. And usually it's the dad. The dad one is always more interesting, right? Because you got to watch it. If you want to have a good cry, all right, you got to watch it, right? Or isn't there like something where you can watch and see who doesn't cry? Isn't there some challenge like that? But anyways, so these girls, these kids, actually boys and girls, it's like, they record the whole thing, home videos, right? And sometimes it's even better when the dad looks really rough, right? Really blue collar, roughed around the edges. And so then it's the dad's birthday. So then they bring this box gift, to the dad. And dad's like, oh, okay, right? Opens it. And then he pulls out a certificate. And the certificate states, by power of the state of California or whatever state, that he is officially their dad. It's official. And what's so amazing is you see these dads start to just cry of joy, with tears of joy. Right? That is so interesting. And I can only imagine what these kids must feel, that a parent would love them so much, that's not their own kid, but love them so much that they would want to be their dad, their mom. And to see them cry and be filled with so much joy now that it's official. Wow. What would that look like to see in our own lives? And I think that's kind of a glimpse of what we see with this woman. She's a daughter. She's God's daughter, right? So Jesus offers more. Notice it says she told Jesus everything. Notice Jesus didn't rush her, but he wanted to offer more. So he offers more, right? When he said, who touched me, he's saying, I don't want to settle for an impersonal interaction. I don't want you to think the best thing in your life is your healing. Because what's going to happen? You get healing now, and you're going to need some other healing later. I want you to know that there's something much greater than these healings. It's me. I want you to know that you will never be alone. I want you to have the peace that enables you, empowers you to face anything. I want you to know that there's someone that wants you as their daughter and will do anything to protect you, to love you. And I will never abandon you. I will never disappoint you. And that's what Jesus is offering. And I love the last part. I've always, maybe this is one of those things when you become a parent, you might kind of notice certain things a little bit more. You don't have to be a parent, by the way, or maybe it's maturity. So maybe it's not about being a parent. But I've always underestimated this last part in verse 41, when Jesus takes her by the hand and basically saying, little girl, little daughter, it's time to wake up. Taking her by the hand. Jesus takes us by the hand. Jesus takes us by the ultimate hand with what he did on the cross so that we don't have to stay dead to him. But he takes us by the hand. So at times when you feel like you can't get out of bed, he's saying to you, it's okay. It's okay. Let's wake up. Let's wake up together. It's okay. It's scary. You've got some major things going on. It's okay. I will be with you. I will take you by the hand and never leave you. Let's face this together. Can you see what Jesus offers? So much more than just medicated healings, medicated answers, or help with big decisions. He offers himself. So for me, on how I apply this, well, one, just like what this woman did, press on. You keep pressing on, right? Just like this woman did with Jesus. You just keep pressing on. If you don't, you're like, how come I'm not getting it? You just keep pressing on. You just keep doing that. but then let Jesus hold you by your hand. Let him say, it's okay, you can wake up now. You don't have to stay in this pain. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You don't have to be alone anymore, because I am with you. So with me and my situation, we're just, right now, it just seems like a little bit more stressful, right? Nothing major, and I'm sure some of you are going through a lot more, right? But, it's like, oh man, I'm just trying to make sure this person's taken care of, make sure that person's taken care of, and just making sure I do this and do that, and making sure I'm still effective in my work and helping, individuals and couples, right? And so you're just like some of you know that feeling. You're just pulled in so many different directions. So I read this, and I think, when I go to God and just read my 2 chapters a day, and I started doing this, I should really slow down. And I should just let him know I'm stressed out. I am so scared. I'm so scared of things just falling apart all around me. I'm so scared to lose my dad. I'm so scared of just all these other small things that's going on. They're not the biggest thing, and I hate myself. I'm like, why am I so scared? It's just a small thing. And I'm so scared of myself. But then, I just kind of allow myself just to sit there and I read. And there are times where I feel like God is just saying, take my hand. You're not alone. You're not alone. And it's going to be okay. I am with you. No matter what happens, you will never be alone. Let's close. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we have you. God, you are a God that, you don't get, in some ways we see in the Bible that you do get offended, but you don't let us stay with our superficial request. But you work with our superficial request. To you is superficial, but to us is everything. But God, you gently, lovingly take us by the hand, and you show us that there is more than these small miracles that we're wishing would happen. But the ultimate miracle that we need is already found in you. So for those of us, God, who, it's been heavy, take them by the hand like a loving father does and reassure them, love them, and let them know, God, that you are by their side. And for those of us, God, who maybe is coming to the surface, but we've got some issues that need to be addressed. Take them by the hand. Walk through those issues so that they know that you are not only the great counselor, but you're also the great physician that's addressing certain things that are in our lives that need to be removed. So we thank you for being so good to us and for loving us. In Jesus' name.